that contribute to stewarding the land and waters in the community with integrity and consideration for future generations, and that includes all the business we conduct tonight. So thank you. And the public hearing statement is held. We are holding this public hearing for the purpose of considering one official community plan and zoning amendment application. The public hearing was advertised on Thursday, June 24th and July 1st, 2021 in the calendar pursuant to the Local Government Act. The role of council is to hear representation from those persons who wish to provide comments regarding the proposed amendment. Everyone who wishes to speak shall be given the opportunity to be heard. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. However, it is important that all who speak at the meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed amendment. It is my responsibility as chair of this meeting to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed application with individual citizens. No decision will be made at the public hearing, but the entire proceedings will be considered by the District of Lake Country Council at a subsequent meeting, or which could be later this evening. We have done that occasionally. Submissions regarding the proposed application may be received prior to or at this hearing. No further information or representation can be received or considered by council after the public hearing is terminated. Please clearly state your name before you begin your comments. The proposed amendments are to facilitate a 3-lot subdivision. And I will ask the planning department and planner, in this case, to describe the proposed amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. So this file number is OCP 2020-001 and Z 2020-006 for the property at 5812 McCoubry Road. The existing OCP future land use designation is rural residential, urban residential, and parkland and conservation, and the existing zoning is RR2 and RU1. This is a public hearing for OCP Amendment Bylaw 1146/2021 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1147/2021, again to facilitate a 3-lot subdivision. And I wanted to let Mayor and Council know that 2 letters were received for the original public hearing date, and 2 letters were received for this public hearing from the same 2 people. A little bit of background. At the May 18th regular council meeting, council gave first and second readings to bylaw 1146 and 1147, forwarded the applications to public hearing, and made a resolution to secure the road dedication on Otley Road, trail dedication along the north property line, and a section 219 no build, no disturb covenant for the parkland conservation designated area prior to adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 1147/2021. The public hearing was held on June 15th, 2021, and third reading was also granted to both bylaws on June 15th. After that council meeting, staff became aware that one of the submissions from the public was mistakenly not forwarded to council, and in the interest of procedural fairness, it was determined a public hearing would need to be held again. Third reading was rescinded on June 29th. As a reminder, the property is located between McCoubry and Otley Roads in the McCoubry Plateau area. As you can see from this ortho photo, there's an existing house on the property, and the majority of the property is currently still in its forested and natural state. As mentioned, the property is split into 3 OCP future land use designations: rural residential to the west, parkland and conservation in green on the left-hand map, running sort of through the middle of the property, and then urban residential, which is bisected by the parkland and conservation future land use designation. On the right-hand side, that map is showing the existing zoning. So it is RR2 on the western portion of the property and RU1 on the eastern portion of the property. This site plan shows the proposed OCP future land use designations. The purpose of the OCP amendment is to realign the parkland and conservation designated area to a more north-south configuration to provide a better alignment and to allow for a contiguous urban residential designated area. So the owner is proposing to redesignate the red portion on the site plan from urban residential to parkland and conservation, and to redesignate this green portion from parkland and conservation to urban residential. And the result of the OCP amendment would be this green area that will be designated parkland conservation. And the owner is proposing to rezone this, again, this green area from RU1 to P5 conservation area. And additionally, because of the proposed road dedication from Otley Road, the two proposed RR2 lots will be slightly too small. Therefore, the owner is proposing to rezone a 0.8 meter sliver of the property shown in red from RU1 to RR2 to facilitate this subdivision of proposed lot A and B from the RU1 portion with the existing house. And to be clear, when the subdivision occurs, if it is to occur, the P5 zone portion and the RU1 portion would be on one lot, which is shown here as remainder lot 99. Again, should council grant third reading of the zoning amendment bylaw, the following items are required to be secured prior to adoption: the road dedication, the trail dedication, which is 6 meters running east-west along the north property line, and again, a section 219 covenant, a no build, no disturb restrictive covenant for the area designated as parkland conservation to ensure it remains undisturbed and in its natural state. And then to end my presentation, just some context photos. On the left-hand side, this is showing the approximate location of the proposed pedestrian trail. This area is closer to McCoubry Road, and as you can see, it's flatter than the portion on the right-hand side, which, as you can see, does have a steep slope going towards Otley Road. On the left-hand side, this is a photo looking south, and it shows the approximate location where the urban residential designation transitions to the parkland and conservation designated area. And then on the right-hand side, this is again looking west, and it's closer to Otley Road, showing that there is a flat portion of the two proposed lots suitable for building sites. And with that, that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Tamara. Can I just ask one question on the adjustments that have been made to the RU1 lot with the changes there? Does that then allow that lot to be subdivided again by giving it the additional? It increases the area of that lot by taking away some of the what is initially zoned a P1 and moving it upwards. So does that then give enough space in that RU1 lot for a further subdivision to be allowed at some point?
Thank you, through your worship. The RU1 portion of the property definitely does have future subdivision potential. RU1, I believe, and I can double check, is a 500 square meter minimum lot size. So it would create more area that's contiguous within the RU1, but there's still other requirements such as lot width, and that would be a limiting factor as well. So I haven't done the calculations, but I believe already they have enough lot area for at least several lots.
Even without the adjustment that we're making today.
Correct.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. It's nice to see you in person. I wondered, we've had a couple of letters, and a question was asked about the possibility of a 6-foot high privacy fence. It appears to me that there is a fence along there. I don't know if it runs the whole length of the property, but I'm just wondering, is that a reasonable request from your perspective? Do you see that sort of thing? I haven't heard of this before. I have where there is a business adjacent.
Thank you, through your worship. I did double check. Obviously, I'm fairly new to the district, so I thought I would check with my colleagues in parks. And they confirmed that it is not something that the district has historically done to build a fence adjacent to new parkland. So this would be something new if it were something that council wanted to see. I know that the property owners, at least one property owner who wrote a letter is here this evening, so I could let her speak to whether or not
Right, and we
fence is there.
she'll have that opportunity to speak, so that's great. And the point about trees being retained in that 6-meter walkway, are we going to be able to retain those trees? That will be turned over to the district, that walkway, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. It will be dedicated to a district. I know that our landscape technician here has walked the site to take a look at it and did think it was something that the district would be beneficial for the district. I don't think that we have details at this point about specifics about whether or not trees will be retained. It certainly is steep in portions.
Well, I guess the reason I raise it is that in view of the extreme heat that we've suffered here, you know, the hottest in Canada, some of the hottest in the world ever. Well, maybe not ever, that's going a little bit too far, but certainly the hottest in Canada. You know, trees play a huge role in mitigating that temperature. So I raise it because I do not want to see us cutting trees unless we absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And through your worship, we certainly will note that it will be dedicated to the district, so the district will have control over whether or not we need to cut down trees or not.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And you did mention letters received.
Correct.
And I'll now ask if there's anyone who wishes to address council with regard to this proposed amendment.
I know.
A2.
Good evening. My name is Erin Calver, and I'm on the direct adjacent property to the property in question. I guess I'll start by saying that I do fully support, as stated in my letter, the redevelopment of these two lots. I'm just looking for assurances from Lake Country. My first would be in regards to utilities. I'm brand new to the Okanagan, so I'm talking for how this would be on the coast if someone was redeveloping, and I apologize if that's not how it works here. So I'm interested in knowing, is the plan to be a walking path or paved for potentially vehicular traffic down the road? Is water, sewer, drainage, or any of those utilities planned to go under that walking path, which would suggest to me that maybe not in a year, but perhaps 10 years, that something might happen with that piece of property that is going to be designated as District of Lake Country property. So I guess that's my first question that I did address in the letter. My second would be in regards to what we just discussed, which is the trees. Obviously, I'm concerned about the trees in the walkway being taken down, and those trees will directly affect my trees. If they were removed, then my roots might be disturbed, or even just having an open area where the wind can pick up could also affect my trees. When I first moved here to this property, right before Christmas, I believe it was, we had a bunch of trees fall down around me. Not directly in my property, but one fell on my fence from another residential one. And I know this property also did lose trees, so it does happen. So it's not just a concern of removing the trees, but opening up the area to allow wind to come through in those kinds of storms. And then finally, one of my immediate concerns is the fence. Now, to answer your question, there is a farm fence along the entire, as far as I know, I mean, I haven't gone to the back of his property, but definitely on the whole depth of my property, it's a farm fence that continues to my neighbors. The fence that I think I just saw in question is probably 3 houses in depth of the property that had that wood fence, but definitely it's just a farm fence. So there doesn't seem to be right now, if that were to become a walkway, there doesn't seem to be a real obvious boundary between both this property and my property and those neighbors behind me. A farm fence does not provide any type of privacy, nor does it provide security. And I obviously would have liability concerns that being the first house off of Macoubry, that is where everyone is going to access this walking path unless you're accessing it but from the bottom road. And as a school teacher, I know that if teenagers want to hang out, they're going to look for pathways like this to start drinking and potentially cause damage. And so I do have a huge liability concern that people, in essence, are walking right by my property. This neighbor house is quite a ways off the walkway, but this literally is right up against my farm fence. So I guess I have both a privacy concern right now. I mean, I obviously bought neighboring rural property for a reason, but also there's a huge liability concern for me that now all these people would be seeing everything in my yard and all the neighboring yards.
Okay, thank you. Those questions will be addressed at survey and at any time that there's no development. This is just subdivision and there's no development permit associated with this.
Okay.
Yeah, but we don't cut trees and you just unless they're dangerous trees. So, and but we do to allow wind to pass if there are trees that are in danger of becoming a sail, and then I mean, like driving a ship sail, they might be thinned. So thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
I'll see if anybody else wishes to address council. Second time of asking. Anybody wish to address council with regard to this? Third time of asking. Hearing none. Any council have any issues to address? And then Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Could you just for the clarification, the fencing, would that be able to be addressed at development permit because we're assigning that property to the district now? So the only fencing would be as I understand it, would be from the property to the trail, which could be addressed, but the owner was addressing it from the trail to her property. So
Get the planner to address that. Thank you.
Through your worship. Likely not, just because of the zoning and the landscaping requirements. For rural properties, it's level 1, which is no landscape buffer required. And usually through development permit, we get fences because of the landscape buffer requirements. They actually require an opaque fence. So likely not. I would believe it would be something that would probably be volunteered.
So if the district doesn't do it as a matter of standard, it's not an opportunity at the development permit. So really the only opportunity is for the applicant to suggest that there's something can be done at this part of the process. Is that where we are? No?
Anyway.
Yes, so essentially, it's not a district standard to build a fence adjacent trail dedication.
Mm-hmm.
So really, and it's not a landscape buffer requirement in the zoning bylaw. So potentially it's something that council could potentially consider, but I think really in this case it would be non-standard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be either for the resident to build it themselves, or for potentially some agreement with the applicant.
And my apologies, I was thinking on the property owner's side. So
Yeah.
really, it's property owners who are responsible for building a fence if they want a fence.
Okay, okay.
Just to be clear, sorry, I was thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
because
two sides of
because
a road
it's the other
dedication.
side of it now, which is
Yes.
only happening because we are dedicating it to be a trail. Otherwise, it would be two property owners together.
That's right.
So it's the fact that we are now, this proposal is taking that and making it a public trail, which then puts it into a different perspective. If the property owners had built the fence before the subdivision we're talking about today, then it would be not an issue, but they haven't. And the issue is being
Still
caused by.
not an issue.
Okay.
I'll take Councillor Gamble. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm looking to see with the previous resolution that we made, and we did include section 219, no build, no disturb covenant for the parkland conservation designated area. I'm wondering if it might be a consideration to include the trail in that as well.
It's a trail.
Is that part of that parkland? If that's the thing, it isn't, is it? The trail goes right the length of the whole.
Through your worship, the trail will be dedicated to the district, so it will become public land. And then the conservation areas on private property. So it will be on remainder lot 99. So the RU1 portion and the P5 portion will be on one property.
But we don't own it. It's a covenant.
Correct. And so it will be protected through the OCP future land use designation, which is parkland and conservation. It will be protected through the P5 conservation zone, which also restricts the uses. And then further, a conservation, a no build, no disturb covenant. So yes, it remains private property, but really it's meant to be maintained undisturbed and in its current natural state.
So I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding where the trail goes. Maybe we
Yeah.
could see it on there.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I've got it
Different
clear in
thing
my
entirely.
mind. Where does this trail go? It's
Along
from Otley up to Macubri, doesn't it?
Yes,
Exactly, that's what I
east,
thought.
west.
Yeah, that's what I thought, which I think is a real benefit. But I'm wondering if we do need to put a covenant on it. It's our own.
No, it's
It will
ours.
be.
It's
Pardon?
ours.
I know that.
We don't have to covenant ourselves.
Well, okay, well.
It's
we don't know.
dedicated to the municipality,
Mhm.
municipal property.
Mhm.
We don't need a covenant on municipal property because that's our policy.
Maybe we need it, but, okay, all right, I will listen to
Yeah,
everybody.
go ahead.
And through your worship,
We'll hear the planner.
the intent of the trail is for a pedestrian walkway. So the conservation area has a slightly different intent in that it's meant to be maintained just as it is currently.
Good, thank you. We'll
Thanks
move
for
on.
that clarification.
And there are no further questions from council. We've done the 3 times with the public, so we can terminate this hearing. Thank you, and move on to the council meeting. And so again, we have done the acknowledgement of the Indigenous territory. And so we need an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Gamble, Councillor Scarrow, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And adoption of minutes of the public hearing from June 15. Councillor Reid?
We do have an amendment to the draft minutes, just to correct one of the items. So I would be prepared to move it with the amendment of the bullet point related to the DC zoning, which was I'm going to read from Raina's statement here that the regular council meeting minutes of the 15th of June be adopted with the following amendments. Resolution number 2106131 is amended by deleting the second to last bullet, which reads information about the proposed landscape buffer along the property lines adjacent to 15575 Commonage Road to reduce the impact of the development on that property, and replacing it with the following information on mitigating the effect of the access roads on neighbouring properties, specifically 15575 Commonage Road, to reduce the impact of development on that property and neighbouring properties, just to clarify that.
That's from the regular council meeting agenda of
15th, June the 15th.
June 15th, and it's not on my agenda.
No, because it was only when we saw the draft minutes as part of the agenda that it became clear that that bullet point was slightly misrecorded.
I'll hear from Raina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Reid's correct. There was an email circulated earlier today. I believe it went to all of council. Councillor Reid brought up a potential error in the minutes, and I went back and reviewed the recording of the minutes. And she was correct that there was a slight error in that one bullet where it identified, as in the current minutes, it identified a landscape buffer, but that was not part of the motion that was read back to council. It was as read by Councillor Reid. So she is correct on that.
As I said, I didn't see that email, but I'll take your word for the amendment is as it should be. All right.
Raina wrote it, that's why I'm confident.
I'll second it.
You received it? Okay, those in favor of the adopting the agenda, the minutes? Councillor Gamble?
Well, because of this, I made sure I read over again, because I had glanced over it and I didn't really notice that, but I noticed in the discussion, there was it was not mentioned that the properties that are included in this bylaw, that in the public hearing, do not include the ALR lands that are also held by the proponent, and there was no mention of that of ALR lands that was, and the Mr. Green confirmed that there were ALR lands that were not part of this proposal.
Mm.
And then in the motion, it's addressed, but it was raised, and it's one of the things that he did respond to.
Can you respond to that, Raina?
I don't have the minutes open in front of me, although I would, you're saying it was included in the resolution?
Yes,
But not
there's a
the
reference to
discussion.
ALR buffers, but it's not mentioned in Mr. Green's presentation, the points that, but he actually did respond to that question and said that, yes, there were ALR lands that belong to the proponent that were not included in this proposal.
So the discussion is just a summary and highlighted capture generally of what was discussed. There was probably, as you recall, that discussion went on for, I think, several hours.
Yes.
So to capture that in the bullets that are there, I think it's the resolution, council's resolution, and the business that was decided is the critical part. Capturing all the discussion and the details in that discussion isn't as critical. We could potentially take that entire discussion out as long as council's resolution is correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll leave it to you.
That's what we're
Yep.
approving.
Yeah.
Or adopting tonight. Okay, and I do have a motion and seconded, and those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. All right. At the adoption of minutes for the public, where regular council meeting of June 15th. We just did the public hearing, right?
Special council.
Special. Okay. Council, yeah.
Did we do the public hearing?
No, that's of June 15th? And those were the ones that we just adopted, right? And now the regular council minutes of June 15th. We do those?
That was the one we did.
We did, okay, and now the special council,
And then come back and do public hearing.
okay, and special council minutes? June. Councillor Gamble, Councillor Reed, those in favor, opposed, motion carries. And now we're doing public hearing minutes, with the amendment.
No, the
amendment is already done.
So what minutes are we adopting?
We missed the public hearing.
I thought you-
Of June 15th.
Of June 15th. I
Okay.
thought we did.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, you did have a mover for the public hearing, and then we jumped down to number 2 and
Oh, okay.
adopted those with the amendment. So 3-2, June 15th, regular council was adopted with the amendment. 3-3, special council has been moved and seconded and carried. So now back to item 3-1. We had a mover, but we've since
Didn't
carried
have a
on.
second.
So we
Now
haven't
I've got
adopted.
Councillor Ireland moving that, or seconding that. And now those in favor, opposed, motion carries. I'm not going to ask for any errors or omissions ever again. Thank you. Nothing to report. Actually, you'll be hearing more from Okanagan Basin Water Board. There is considerable happening there, but you're going to be addressed by other delegates from the Okanagan Basin Water Board. Big things happening with some of the things there. Announcement. There are no council meetings scheduled for July 21st to August 23rd. So we will do a bit of a break over those times, and that's the only announcements. Delegation here tonight?
No, Mr. Gorner was unable to make it this evening.
Not able to make up. There was somebody going to address a petition that we received from the Pretty Road area. And, but that wasn't Mr. Groner, but Mr. Tyler, yeah. But, Mr. Tyler apparently couldn't make it either. So I just want to let them know all the people that signed the petition, we have received it. It will be addressed by staff, be directed by staff, by this council to receive it and deal with it. So that I do have that one, but I didn't have the other delegation comment or anything. So I'd ask that we receive and direct staff with the Pretty Road petition. Councillor Scarrow, Councillor Gamble, those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. So official community plan amendment. Who's doing that? We're item 7.1. Planning.
Through your worship, this is the one that we just saw for the public hearing that I already made a presentation on.
Where are we with it?
This is for third reading for the 2 bylaws that we just had a public hearing for.
Third reading. Councillor Scarrow, Councillor Ireland. Those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. And official community plan, is that a part of it?
Yeah. Public comment.
On item 7.2. No public comment? This. First, second, third. Approval.
The
Approval?
manager of planning is available
Oh,
on.
okay. You addressing that, manager? Can't hear you. You're muted.
There we go. Mr. Mayor, I had not intended to give a presentation. You will recall we have addressed this set of bylaws a number of times. This is for the property in Oyama, on Oyama Road, where we were rectifying some issues with lines on the map and paving the way for a subdivision to occur in compliance with an Agricultural Land Commission Act resolution dating from a significant number of years ago. So we're hoping very much to tidy this situation up and conclude it.
Okay. Councillor Arnold? Councillor
I'll
Gamble?
move it. I'll move the option
Further discussion?
for adoption.
Yep, for adoption. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Corey. And development application for development variance. Who's it? Pardon?
Yeah.
Oh, public comment. And there is some public here tonight, as a matter of fact. So the, yeah, this is the time for anybody who wishes to address council on item of concern, complaint or compliment. Second time of asking. Third time of asking. Hearing none, then we'll move on to development variance permit. Oh, there weren't any phone-ins on it, I guess.
All right, it's me again. This is file number DVP 2021-004 for the property at 13614 Cars Landing Road. This property is within the Rural Residential Future Land Use designation of the OCP and the RR2 and W1 zones. This is a development variance permit application to vary the dock shape to allow a U-shaped dock and dock materials to allow steel piles. No letters were received from the public regarding this application. So for some quick context, this is again Cars Landing Road, adjacent Okanagan Lake. As you can see from the ortho photo, there is an existing L-shaped dock. And this is what the applicant is proposing. So the applicant is proposing to build an addition to the existing dock that will provide additional private moorage and create a more functional dock design. The proposed dock extension would extend the dock to a total length of 23.4 meters from the foreshore and create a new end deck in a U-shaped configuration. The new design would accommodate 2 boat lifts and would use steel piles for the extension and the boat lifts. The existing dock has 1 boat lift only. To support the application, the applicant submitted a foreshore development report completed by a qualified environmental professional. This report notes that the dock is in a no color zone for kokanee shore spawning. And it also states, and this is a quote, "There are no adverse residual effects to environmental values anticipated as a result of the project." The proposal complies with all other zoning bylaw regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to address council with regard to this variance. Second time of asking, third time of asking. Hearing none, council wish to address us, Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I will not be supporting this particular dock extension. We have supported U-shaped docks in the past, but this is a whole new take on a U-shape. And quite frankly, you could put the boat lifts on either side of a spine dock and accomplish the same thing in terms of moorage. So, you know, this would extend. The dock is almost 10 meters, and then you include the 2 boat lifts. So this is a massive extension across the water. So I just won't be supporting it. You could easily put that boat lift on the top new part and have 2 boat lifts. So I see no reason to support this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scarrow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair. Tamara, you talked to me about, you told me this is just an extension, an addition, so to speak, and the existing dock will remain in exactly the same place. The new dock will be in the same place as the old dock. They're not going to change the location.
Through your worship, so when you look at this proposal, the light gray shows the new, and then the dark gray shows the existing. So the first portion would remain in its exact same location, and then they're actually extending out the dock with a new, I don't know what you would call it, dock panel, if you will, using another existing portion, and then a new piece for the end deck. So anything new is what is new, and the dark gray is existing.
The reason I asked the question is from our photos, Google Earth photos, the existing dock looks very close to the property line, and I see that extended boat holder pushes even further towards the property line. I'm wondering if side yard setbacks and those kind of values are taken into effect before or after the boat lift has been installed.
I'll hear from Rena with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for council's information, we have the consultant on the line. I can transfer her through at council's wish.
Okay, we'll get her to answer that.
Okay, one moment, please. Brittany, can you hear me?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for council's information, we have the consultant line. I can transfer.
We can't hear her.
Brittany, if you can please turn off all audio in the background and just listen through the phone, or else you'll hear the background noise and there's a delay. Hello, Brittany, can you hear me?
Brittany, can you hear me?
Hello? No, I have to call back.
If you can just turn off all background noise and just speak to us through the phone.
Turn on all just listen through the phone, or else you'll hear background. I can't hear.
Hello, Brittany?
What's the number?
Brittany, can you hear me?
583.
Don't hang up.
Why?
Hello, Brittany? We can hear you. Or not. I believe she may be gone. We'll try and get her back on the
You
line.
lost her?
It sounds like it, yes.
Okay. If we could have the picture up again? Wherever it went. And Councillor Scarrow's question, I thought it, I looked at the map as well, and it looked reasonably close, but I thought I read 50 meters somewhere. Councillor Koza?
If you look right on the thing, it says the property boundary, and then it shows a 5-meter setback. I don't know what the bylaw is, but it shows right on the thing in front of us. So and Councillor Reid is saying it's 3, so it's over what we need by 2 meters.
Yeah, unless it's 6 meters if it's in a P1 or right of public access. If then it would be a 6 meter.
So it's
Within.
setbacks, correct?
My
That's
understanding
what
is.
I thought I read somewhere. Yeah. And what, Councillor Ireland, what was those lifts are taking up too much water space, you say?
Well, what I'm saying is that. Sorry. Thank you. What I'm saying is that this configuration greatly increases the size of the dock parallel, and then they add another boat lift on. So the whole parallel to the waterfront thing is much, much bigger with the 2 boat lifts. So, and
But-
in
but
fact, the
it's-
U-shape has been spun around from all the other U-shaped
I
designs that
have,
we've seen.
before.
Because the U-shape usually allows the person to park in the middle of the U, which isn't taking up as much space. But what they're gonna do with the U space is have a private swimming area, it looks like, and have the boats on the outside, so I don't support that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, got somebody there, Raina?
Totally wrong. Where's my release?
Hello, Brittany? Apologies, she's gone again.
Still can't get her? Gone again?
I'm releasing.
I'll take Councillor Reid while we're waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with Councillor Arland. I don't have a problem with the steel piles. I think we've talked about that before. So that one I would be happy to approve. But and I know that we do not have control over boat lifts as part of the bylaw. However, by approving this variance, the variance is in order to get the boat lifts. So given that that is the consequence of the design of this U-shaped dock, then I cannot approve it just because the amount of space that it's going to be taking up, and we are facilitating that by approving this particular form of a U-shaped design. And I agree with Councillor Arland's comments. I think it was a point well made that previously we have approved U-shapes in relation to safe access. So allowing people to get on and off both sides of the boat and they park directly into the U-shape. That is not what this U-shape is facilitating here, so I cannot approve it.
Take you next. Okay, thank you. And while we're waiting to get the consultant, I'll take Councillor Gamble as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I too have concerns about the shape. I know that when we talked about the U shape at the start many years ago, one of the reasons was that it really increased the width, the usage, and that has an impact on the water itself, the area that is disturbed in the water. So I don't believe at this point that I could support it, but I'm willing to hear more discussion. And I know that we're going to hear from Brittany, and I'd like to hear that before
I
coming
have
to a final
Councillor
decision.
McKenzie on the line too,
And Councillor McKenzie.
and he's probably running out
Thank you,
of
Mr.
time.
Mayor.
Yeah,
I think the big issue here is because it is so close to the property line, even though it's in the setback, by the time you throw a boat on there, the boat is wider than the lift. You're encroaching on that pretty good. And then with Councillor Ireland's comments about how wide that is, I agree. You put a boat on the other side as well, and you're taking up a lot of area there. So I'm if this was in the middle of a big chunk of property, I might overlook that, but not so close to the property line when it's next to the neighbors. So I can't support this one as well because of that.
okay, thank you. Councillor Reid? No. Did we get anybody?
Brittany, can you hear me? Hello, Brittany?
Yeah, I'll see if he wants. I asked previously if anybody wanted to address council from the audience, and nobody did, but did you want to address? Come ahead, or do I need a resolution from council? It's a variance, but we've already shut down the public hearing. So can I hear from an applicant?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Reid, Councillor Ireland, those in favor, opposed, motion. Okay, now we can hear you.
Excuse me. So my name's Sam Brovender. I'm the owner of the property. Sorry, I've lost my voice just with kids. So the rationale for the design, first of all, the extension is just water depth issues. It's very rocky, and the lakes obviously over the past number of years varies significantly from too high to too low, and that's always a struggle. So that allows us to get a boat consistently to the dock, because without the distance, it's a very rocky bottom there. The rationale for the setback is we've not changed the existing boat lift width on the north side isn't changing, the setback's not changing. It meets all the requirements of the setback. So on the north side, there's no change to the setback whatsoever relative to the boat lift. The boat lift to the south, the rationale for having that extension is just as one of the other councillors has mentioned, for safety getting on and off the boat. If you don't have an extension back and just simply place the boat lift there, the getting on and off the boat becomes much more difficult because you're against much shorter distance, if you will, right? So that's why the boat now has something to go up against. Mm-hmm. So it's quite simply that's the reason for that design without changing it other than getting on and off on the south side. If we were to do a U-shaped dock that we park in the middle, the overall width of the dock may actually be greater because you have the width of the boat lift in the middle, plus you have the extensions on the fingers on both sides, and you'd still have the boat lift to the north. So the width wouldn't change. So we're meeting setback. That's why we set it up that way, to be honest. So.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the applicant?
I would just say if it wouldn't necessarily have to change the width of the dock because it would still be 10 meters and your boat lift, your U would be in the middle of that. So you would have less space on either side than you currently have for sure. But it doesn't, having a U shape doesn't predicate that you have to be larger than the 10 meters of the zoning bylaw.
So I couldn't quite follow that.
So your zoning bylaw requires the dock width to be a maximum of 10 meters. So you can make it 10 meters with the U-shaped dock. Having a U-shaped dock does not mean that you have, the way as Councillor Ireland and I described it, does not mean you have to be wider than 10 meters. You can build within the zoning bylaw with a U-shaped dock in that configuration, which would make it 10 meters wide, which would then reduce the impact of compared with the current design.
But I don't think we're asking for the dock to be any wider.
But by asking for the U-shaped design that you have, you're placing the boat lifts on either end of that U-shaped design.
So my understanding is with the U-shape, we could still meet all the requirements and put the boat lifts on either side. There's no, I don't believe there's any, put the U the other way, we can still have the boat lift to the north. We can have the boat lift in the middle of the U, and we can still have a boat lift on the outside. There's nothing preventing it. So we can in fact have 3 boat lifts.
You're not asking for 3 boat lifts, right?
No, but the variance component, I don't believe has anything to do with the boat lifts.
I would disagree, but that's, you're right in my, yeah.
I don't understand how the boat lift adds to the width. No? I don't. But if you put a boat on there, however many feet that is, I can't read that far away. But that, as Councillor Ireland has said, that occupies a lot of water space parallel to the shore, greater than the 10 meters that your dock should be.
I guess what I'm saying is if we just flip the U in place, how it is, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow, where you enter the U that way, it's still the 10 meters. Nothing's changed.
I don't want to get into a debate with you, but
No problem.
if you want to put up, if you present a U-shaped dock that faces out where you park the boat inside, and you feel like you need to put a 3rd boat lift on there, then that's up to you. I mean, that's an enormous cost that if you want to buy a third boat and have a third boat up there, we'd still have to approve the U-shape irregardless. So I don't, you know, I'm not with your logic on it. I'm staying where I am. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scarrow.
Appreciate you being here, first of all. So you said that it's not getting any wider north to south, but yet I see a 2.4 meter addition with new, and then I see a second boat rack also coming to the south. So from a boater's perspective, one of our citizens who happens to be riding in front of your very beautiful property, they're going to see an awful lot more than what they see today. And what you're going through here as a variance is a difficult process, because what we do, and I'm looking 3 docks down from you and I'm seeing some type dock, and I figure, oh my God, that's awful. That's what we're trying to avoid by even regulating docks. So I understand what you're trying to accomplish, and I just don't understand why you couldn't accomplish that with either an inverted U or the T shape that we already approve and that you wouldn't need a variance for.
So, okay, so if we just make it a U the other way.
You'd still need a variance for the U the other way, but in the past we've accepted that. But I also see all of what you want to accomplish being able to be accomplished with the T-dock.
So the issue we had with the T-dock, just to answer that, is if you pull up on the south side on the T-dock, the length of a boat, whether it's to get off the back or off the front, you don't have a finger to get off the boat.
Okay.
Like, or if you didn't have a lift, if it's just battered board or, you know, a bumper or something to put fenders on, you're only docking against 3 meters.
Okay, well.
Does that make sense?
We as councillors have to measure, of course, you're here for your own benefit to get something so that it works very well for you, We would like to accommodate that wherever possible, but our job is to also protect the public from whatever effect you do may have on them. And that's why I'm thinking some of our councillors are having a hard time with this. And mostly, I'm trying to offer you opportunities to address some of council's things. And I think that what I hate most about this is by the time you get the 2 wings on with the boat lifts, you're probably looking at somewhere around 20 meters, maybe even more.
So we've had a U shape the other way in the past on another property, and I'm okay with that as well. To us, this actually, from our experience with the other shape, this functioned better, but we're okay the other way.
Okay, well, I can't approve either of those things, but I'm just offering you some potential solutions for your request so that you can get your dock built. And I know variances are difficult and docks are difficult for us to answer. And we actually, I think as a district are reviewing our dock bylaw right now. But the way I'm hearing the flavor of council is this might not happen tonight.
Well, we are reviewing, but we're not relaxing the setbacks nor width nor lengths. We're saying that instead of wooden pilings, we want steel pilings. So that wouldn't take a variance subsequently, but certainly the amount of frontage that is sort of the width is measured is something that we're concerned with, and how much water space is taken up. Do we have the consultant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do. I've been told that she's only hearing a loud buzzing sound when I put her through. So, and neither myself nor even have the background experience with the phone line. So I'll try one more time to see if we can get her through and see if we can hear her. Hello, Brittany, can you hear me? Hello, Brittany?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do, I've been told that she's only hearing a loud buzzing sound when I put her through, so.
Yeah, hello, Brittany.
Can you figure it out?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Brittany?
Hello?
We can hear you. Can you please turn all the
Hello?
background noise off? We can hear the echo in the background, so all the audio has to be turned off in the background and just speak through the phone.
Hello, Brittany?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
We can hear you. Can you please turn all the background?
I was trying to get started.
The audio has to be turned off.
Let's just go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you just fine.
Hello?
We can hear you just fine. You need to turn all the background audio off. Can you hear me?
I'll hear from Councillor Ireland. He has a proposal.
So considering that we're having a hard time with Brittany here, and considering that we are going to approve and allow steel pilings as soon as we can, so that they won't require a variance, I'm okay with the steel pilings. I'm looking at option D, where so we don't cost this fellow some more money, and go back to staff and work out a plan so that we don't have to come for another variance and not deny, let's not cost everybody more money than he's already spending. So I would support option D to look at a redesign, then maybe, we can organize to get Brittany on the phone or have that proper discussion.
That sounds like a good plan. So, I'm sorry, I got you out there. You don't have a choice. We're gonna vote option D. It'll come back to you.
Sure.
Okay. You're moving, Councillor Kozub second, and no more discussion. Those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And thank you, Council, and thank you, Blair. All right, moving on. And
Otherwise, we were gonna circle that way again. All night long.
tell Brittany how to use her phone after this. And, okay, where are we? Number 10. Community hall and community engagement grants. With the, community hall, when I read their proposal, part of Raina, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before council tonight, we have several requests. So each year council has several pots of money for the community to apply for from. We have our community hall grant and aid application. And this year we also have our community engagement grant. So both have $15,000 in them. Some of the community engagement grant has already been allocated by council this year. None of the community hall grant has been allocated this year. And within the report, we've provided council with information on the historical amounts that have been allocated from the community hall grant. So we did receive 2 requests. One of those is from the Okanagan Centre Hall Association, and I see several members are in attendance. So if council has any questions for them. And the other request is from the Oyama Community Club. And staff, as shown in the report, staff are recommending that the request from the Oyama Community Club be funded through the community engagement grant, as set out in option A for their planned community garden project. And there was an email that was circulated to council earlier today, or at the very last minute. We also did receive a request from the Winfield Memorial Hall, And their request was for 25,000 to fund the property taxes and insurance for the hall. So that information was circulated to council and attached to the agenda item. So that is before council for information, available for questions. I believe Matt Vader's most likely on the call as well, if there's any questions about the community engagement grant. And I'm not sure if anyone from Oyama Community Hall is available.
I'll entertain a motion for 11-1A. That's the community hall grant for the Okanagan Center and the community engagement grant for Oyama Community Hall. Councillor Gamble and Councillor Ireland. Any discussion? Councillor Reid?
Thank you. I just wonder whether we could clarify on the Okanagan Community Centre Hall. The damage was caused during a windstorm on the roof, and there was a question about the insurance, and the response was that the insurance did not pay because the roof was needing repair. However, according to our reports, the roof was repaired in 2007 at a cost of $45,000 through an application of the district. So I'm just wondering, could there be some clarification about that, just so we have all the information in front of us? Was it a different part of the roof, or?
Good evening.
Hello. Elaine Gibbons, 10693 Okanagan Center Road West. I'm a director on the board for the Okanagan Center Hall Association. And the 45,000 was for the whole of the main hall, and the money that we are asking for now is for the part that is over the stage.
Okay.
So the whole of the big roof was done.
But not the section that got hit.
Not the section that over the stage, because at that point it didn't need to be done. So when was that, Benny?
Okay.
2007 was, yeah.
So
yeah.
it was quite a few years ago.
And it was on the schedule to get done, and it didn't get done, and then the insurance backed out.
Right. So in the meantime, we had to do our floor, which was 45,000. So it kind of took a back seat, unfortunately.
Thanks for the clarification, Elaine. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't go away. I have Councillor Scarrow. You're up there forever.
That's okay. You're used to it, aren't you?
In the crossfire. Councillor Scarrow.
Okay, a couple of my questions might be for Elaine, but most of them are through the chair, if I can, for now, to start with Rena. You said we have 15,000 and 15,000. That's a $30,000 total. The Okanagan Center Hall is asking for 15,000. The Oyama Hall is asking for 5,000. And I heard the Winfield Memorial Hall is asking for 45,000 to cover taxes and insurance. Is it 25 or 45?
25.
So you have 15,000 in the community hall capital grant, none of which has been allocated. You have 15 in the community engagement, 2,000 of that has already been allocated.
13 left.
So you've got 13 left, and Winfield is asking for 25,000.
Okay, there's just a couple of things I want to ask. When these municipal or these halls apply, I've noticed that we've got financial statements and we've got different things and written requests. Did we get that from the Winfield Memorial Hall?
Just today.
Did we receive financial statements and all of the information that we required? Okay.
We did.
So my concern is that we need to treat these halls fairly. But I have a question: have we ever provided insurance for the Winfield Memorial Hall in the past?
No, and based on council's policy, it's a community hall capital grant. So the funds are intended, as per council's policy, to be used for capital projects, which the halls generally use for roofs or flooring or structural or some type of capital improvement. They have never been, to my knowledge, or as shown in the report, allocated towards property taxes or insurance.
Okay. Then I'm in full support of both of these grant and aid requests.
Councillor, or I'll take Administrator.
Through the mayor. So the request for property taxes, there's different mechanisms that council has in place for different types of funding for their community hall partners. And the community hall grant, as Ms. Seabrook has indicated, is intended for capital. The community engagement grant is really intended to partner with other groups within the community that are doing work that we can help. And then there's the permissive tax exemption, which is really intended for property taxes. Council had previously excluded the Winfield Memorial Hall from the property tax exemption. And we haven't, certainly in the time that I've been here, but I'm not sure about previous to that, provided funding for any groups in lieu of property taxes, given that there is a mechanism for that.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that these community halls are really important to our community, and the groups that operate them and do all this work, they have been unable to raise any money. They have been unable to carry on their functions as they normally do. You know, I know that I don't know much about Winfield Hall, but I know that Oyama Hall and Okanagan Center Hall are quite successful at fundraising when they're allowed to do so. Yeah. But they haven't been allowed to do so during this COVID issue. And these buildings and these people and their functions are incredibly important to us, especially now that we're coming out the other side. So I think that support is in order.
Well, and certainly area or option A includes the Okanagan Center Community Hall Association grant request and the funding for the Oyama Community Garden request is part of option A. So Councillor McKenzie, you had a comment?
Yes, thanks. So I do support all these projects. Obviously, we only have a limited amount of money here. The one other thing that I would like to mention is we have the Okanagan task force that's going around cleaning up our bush from garbage. They are also looking for some money. I was, you know, talking to them about it in the last couple of weeks. So they will be applying at some point here too. So I'd kind of like to save a little bit for them. They're doing a super important task of going in the bush and cleaning up all that garbage that's not ending up in our landfill from, you know, if I get right into it, our landfill in Kelowna, I think needs a big overhaul personally. And that's why we're getting so much garbage dumped in the bush. So would like to save a little bit for them as well. So I wouldn't want to throw it all away all at once here. So if we can somehow come up with something there that is a little bit fair for everybody, but if we can keep a little bit of gunpowder at the end of the day, please.
Thank you. Raina, I'll take.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Matt Vader would also like to speak, and I can advise Councillor McKenzie that we also have our grant and aid application that does have, and I apologize, I don't have that amount right in front of me, but there is still some money in the grant and aid fund. So that group could certainly apply through that mechanism, and I believe Mr. Vader will speak to the funds that are still available in the community engagement.
So all that's on the table tonight anyway is the Okanagan Center Community Hall request and the Oyama Hall request. Thank you, Raina. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to comment that unless there is a change in the relationship with the Winfield Hall, I don't see that we can address that situation. Taxes are not capital, so we certainly couldn't fund those taxes with the capital fund. That would not be appropriate. Those things remain to be sorted out, and they need to be.
All right. Oh, Matt, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to provide some more information about the community engagement grants and on the report. So we have had a number of other requests that bring us up to the total that council appropriated to that at the 15,000. They'll be coming forward soon. As Raina mentioned, I think probably for the Okanagan Forest Task Force, the grant and aid is probably the most appropriate based on the parameters of what the community engagement grant. But we did meet with Oyama Community Club about this, and as staff on the parks side, what they're trying to do really is a massive benefit to the community based on the lack of public lands minus the linear components in Oyama. So to work with them to provide this as a public space, we saw as a good fit with the community engagement grant rather than the community hall capital, because it really meets the intent of that program a little bit closer.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thanks to the community club, and they're coming forward with a very balanced proposal. I really appreciate the amount of fundraising that's going into this from the community club side. And I know that we read in the report that there's a phase 2 planned for $9,000 in 2022. And I think it is appropriate that we would only consider that in 2022, as this is a first come, first serve grant. But we may wish to look perhaps at budgeting time about increasing the amount that we allocate to the community engagement grant, because it seems to be serving a very good purpose and inspiring some really fantastic things in our community. So given the take up this year, I think it might be prudent to look at that at budget time and see whether we need to set aside an additional amount to continue the good work.
And I'd just like to follow up on what Councillor Gamble was saying, and indeed, taxes are not a part of what these grants are about, and that's why we have tax relief for nonprofits and where we can. And certainly, I think it's a good opportunity for the Memorial Hall Club to take another look at what our proposal was for the use that we might have of some parking space for members of the public when they're picking up their children. I don't know what's going to happen with the middle school children where they're going to be picked up, but it might be necessary. And we offered snow plowing, snow removal, painting, resort, so and relief from taxes. So they would have money in the bank if they unlock the gate and let the public use their hallway. So they have to address that at a meeting of themselves at some time and see that there is a benefit to work with the District of Lake Country and share that lot, and we'll do our share in looking after it, and they will see it as all of the members of the community being able to use it at different times to safely pick up their children from the school across the street from them. So, I mean, that's my rant for tonight. But I'll hear from the administrator.
Further to the question, through the mayor, further to the question regarding how much was left in the grants to community organizations. And I don't know how much is left to be expended, if there is anything left to be expended out of it. But there's $2,669 left in the grants to community organizations. So that would be available if there was groups such as the task force to requesting funds.
All right. We've moved it. Those in favor of option 8. Opposed, motion carries. Good, thank you. All right, and asset retirement obligations. Are we really doing that? Oh, that's, oh, he's been waiting all evening for this. Thank you.
Accounting standards, everyone's favorite. I bring it back.
Doesn't this come with fear?
It should. This is exciting stuff.
Just wait, it gets even better.
Now people are leaving now.
Yeah.
It's the first time we've had an audience and you're clearing the room.
Yes, you may leave, ladies. We won't be insulted.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right.
Look like it's here.
Yeah, I was going to start off by apologizing that we're in Lake Country, and this is from back in Saskatchewan, actually. So this is as a picture I took last summer at Candle Lake, Saskatchewan. So
that's pretty nice.
I'm already off to a tough start here, but next time I'll use a picture from here. Yeah, would that have been your first guess in Saskatchewan?
Yeah, nice sky.
Good evening, your worship and council. So I'm here to present on asset retirement obligations. This is a public sector accounting board standard 3280. So the Public Sector Accounting Board, PSAB, issued this standard in August 2018. It impacts public sector entities such as the district. The district must implement this standard for the year ended December 31st, 2023. This deadline was deferred by a year due to COVID. This is quite a ways out, but it's good to be prepared for something like this. It's going to involve quite a bit of work from a lot of different departments. So we're trying to get it on your radar just now. So basically, an asset retirement obligation is a legal obligation associated with the retirement of a tangible asset. If you have a legal requirement to decommission or restore assets such as land or buildings back to a certain standard, you must record an additional liability. Asset retirement obligations have existed in the private sector and publicly traded companies for a long time and are just now being introduced in the public sector. Examples in the private world would be decontaminating a nuclear power plant site or restoring a gas station with underground tanks or reclaiming a mine site. So I had to spice it up with some, just to keep people awake with my accounting presentations. So what does this all mean? So the financial statements are used to provide users of those statements a reflection of the financial health of an organization. So say a municipality has a significant amount of buildings that they own outright. A user of those statements might think, wow, they're doing great, they're in a great financial position. But if you found out that all those buildings have asbestos in them and you know you're going to incur significant costs down the road, you might not look at that organization quite as favorably. So this standard is trying to address that gap and make sure the statements are providing a clear picture. So I'll use an example of it's a semi-real, semi-fake example. So looking at the fire hall, I'll put some fake conditions on it. So when this building is completed and put into use, the cost of this building will be depreciated over the fire hall's useful life. The cost of the building is made up of design costs, building material, labor, and other costs that all go into getting the asset ready for use. So this is the fake part. So obviously this isn't the case, but for the sake of this example, that this station was built in a provincial park, and as part of the agreement, in 30 years, the land has to be restored to its prior state. There would obviously be a significant cost to having to do that, and you have a legal obligation that you can't get out of. The purpose of this standard is that you would recognize a liability for the future costs and a corresponding increase to your assets to reflect that this is part of the cost of the asset, in the same way that materials, labor, and other costs of the building were part of the asset cost. So to recap, normally you have all your costs for your asset up front, and then you recognize them in your financial statements over the useful life. This standard actually has you include the cost of the future costs you expect to restore the asset at the end of the life. These add to the asset costs and get depreciated, just like the upfront costs. And then you factor in the time value of money using a discount rate. So what this is not, does not have to do with contaminated sites. They have their own standard. Contaminated sites have more to do with unexpected events, such as improper use of assets. Whereas this isn't necessarily associated with contamination. is more based on acquisition, construction, development, and normal use. So an example of a contaminated site would be a pipe bursting and leaking into a river, whereas an ARO is something you know needs to be decommissioned in the future. You have a legal obligation to do. So a couple examples, a requirement to restore a leased site, closing a landfill, retiring any sort of equipment with dangerous substances, removal of asbestos, which I'll use as an example in the next couple slides because I know this applies here at the district. So when you actually have to recognize a liability for an ARO is if there's a legal obligation to incur the costs. BC law requires employers to hire a qualified contractor to remove asbestos as found, so this criteria would be met. The past transaction has already happened. In this case, these buildings would already be owned. It's expected that future economic benefits will have to be given up. There would always be a cost to getting rid of the asbestos, and a reasonable estimate of the amount can be made. This type of work happens all the time, so it would be reasonable to be able to get quotes and we get an estimate of this. And this is likely where this will come into play at budget time, and we have to start looking at trying to price out some of these. So all these have to be present to recognize a liability. Some examples for the district are any sort of buildings, leased properties, treatment plants, docks, radio towers, pump stations, or park infrastructure where some of this might be present to start making an inventory of. This will need to be a collaborative effort amongst basically every department in the district to identify assets with potential AROs. And once they're identified, we'll have to potentially lean on the expertise of not only people within our departments, potentially hire third-party help to come up with those reasonable estimates for the cost. And it can potentially impact certain decisions going forward. So it can impact lease versus buy versus build decisions. It really makes you have to pay attention to your contract language, not that we wouldn't already. And it could have an impact on capital budget decisions, knowing that certain buildings might contain asbestos. For example, this project will be a significant amount of work for the district. For example, I read online that the district in Nanaimo is putting aside $100,000 for assistance of a consultant to help with the project, and they're expecting additional funding will be required to assess the liabilities. So some questions to start thinking about for our team, thinking about assets that are already known to require remediation or to be retired eventually, thinking of any buildings that contain asbestos or other hazardous materials, any contracts that we have that might require cleanup or remediation, and any upcoming legislation which could cause future requirements. You made it through. Everyone stayed awake. Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I enjoyed it anyway. Can I just clarify that the need to have an ARO, is that predicated purely on having a building or having a building with specific abatement costs to it? So do we always have to include it, whatever we build, assuming at some point in the future, 50 years out there will be a need to retire or modify the building? Does it come as standard, or is it very specifically connected to hazardous or remediated land, like the liquid waste management plant?
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily mean every building. It would really depend if all those factors are present. And if you're not putting any sort of hazardous materials in it and you have no actual contractual obligation to eventually retire, then I would say no. But
okay. But if you made the choice to retire it, I say this building didn't have any asbestos in it and we made the choice to retire it and build a new one, that wouldn't necessarily incur an ARO.
No, okay. But you would just have the cost of retiring it, but
at the time.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have to factor it in at the beginning of the life cycle. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gamble.
Thanks. I thought you did a great presentation, kept us awake too. That was good. I'm wondering about, is this different from the asset management plan that we had I know Greg Buckholz had presented that to us in the past.
That was
Do
an
these
audit.
intersect?
That was an audit of our assets, our in-ground, our infrastructure.
But I understood that we also calculate a value for our total assets. And so I'm just wondering how that intersects with it.
This would be separate, but there's a chance that we could lean on some of that work if some of that calculating the value would determine the need to retire things in the future. So
yeah,
because I know that he did do a lot of work on that, and I just thought maybe that's a good starting place to help you figure out where our liabilities lay.
I read this through and I know of some areas that where they have fuel tanks or gas tanks, and they ran electric diesel to generate electricity in a small community. That ground would be considered contaminated, and you have a big cleanup there. We inherited, I think, only the facility from the regional district, the arena, and that may have had asbestos or something. I don't know what it could, but that would have to be looked at. But well, the old fire hall didn't have any insulation. So I don't know, but it may be that it might be a hazardous place as well. But this is new, and any other municipal facilities are new. So, but certainly even gas pumps, when that land is considered contaminated, I'm not sure that we own any gas pumps unless it's at Jack Seaton Park or something, but at our maintenance yard. But yeah, but I didn't know they were doing that now, but it's worth doing.
yeah, it'll come down to whether we own the land and then whether we're responsible for cleaning it up.
Yeah,
but we'll do a comprehensive review.
Oh yeah, and then I'm going crazy with it, and any pulp mill town goes crazy with it. But who's there? Oh, Greg? He's got questions for you. You're up, Greg. Can't hear you. Unmute. Unmute.
Rookie mistake. So, yeah, anytime we look at asset management, we look at proper disposal of assets over time. So we do want to look at the cost of doing that. This is a little bit different, but it is related. So in our asset management plans, we do want to look at proper asset disposal and account for those costs.
Okay. You done? Is that it? Good. Thank you very much. That was exciting, right? All right. Nothing from in camera, nothing from committee, Board of Education meeting, etc. Strategic priorities. We did that. We do that all the time. Councillor items, notice of motion from June 15. Did we deal with that? No. Councillor Ireland? Or are we dealing with it? Raina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Ireland, we had emailed earlier, weren't sure if you wanted to go ahead and discuss this tonight or if you wanted to postpone it based on Mr. Gerner's presentation. If the two are related and you wanted some clarification from Mr. Gerner, if it related to your notice of motion, or alternatively, if you'd like to go ahead and move this resolution, this motion for council's consideration, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to have had Mr. Gerner here. He could have perhaps explained a few of the more technical details, as I am not a drug dealer or expert. However, what I worry about is waiting. And Mr. Gerner indicated that he might not be able to come before us until September. And, you know, every minute and day that we wait on these things, we don't get anything done. And it's hard enough to get things done as we follow procedures. So I'm prepared to still go ahead with it. I think it's incredibly important. If anybody's, everybody's been paying attention to the COVID numbers, but not a lot of the people have been paying attention to the deaths that have been happening on a daily basis in our province. And those numbers are horrific. They're absolutely horrific. And every doctor that's had anything to do with public health has been screaming for this for not just this year, but for years and years. That, sure, some of the drug addicts are criminals, but they're not all. And to make them criminals and to allow the police to make these important public health decisions is wrong. So, selling the drugs is wrong. The drugs aren't great for our community, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the actual people themselves not being criminalized and getting the help that they need. Because when they're criminalized, they don't come and get the help that they need. And, it might not be your family, but it's somebody's family. And I do actually happen to know several parents that have lost their children, young children. One of my son's good friends at 20 years old. I've seen these sorts of things. My wife sees it in emergency every single day. And right now, it's out of control. Suicide attempts in teenagers is out of control in our community. And I would suggest every community. And we've got to do something. And this isn't going to solve all those problems, but it's going to allow those people to come forward and get help. The people that can get past that. And I think that's incredibly important. And it's a step that we have to take to healing this. It's not going to solve the problems. I'm not going to solve all the problems, but it's a good step.
Thank you. Councillor Scarrow.
If Councillor Ireland has made that motion, I would second it.
Okay.
And I would like to speak, try to speak a little bit to it. Yeah, we've lost some family members. We lost them to fentanyl. We lost them to suicide, drug related. And on Tuesday, I attended a celebration of life for my best friend's son, who was lost to fentanyl. Let's move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Reid.
I would also support this motion. I think we've had Mr. Groner come before us and decriminalisation was a key part of that. I know this has come before other municipalities and some have viewed it as not within their remit, but I think we all have a duty to our community, whether we've been personally touched by this or whether we care for the people who have been touched by it. I think we need to say something, and I think more voices speaking up on this issue is just adding to the chorus that hopefully will listen from the federal government. So we're calling on the federal government to do something, and I think Councillor Ireland's motion makes that very clear that that is where the action needs to happen. I would also like to, part of this is a continuum, and with decriminalisation also comes support. Councillor Ireland has mentioned that. So if there is a way of including increased funding from the cost savings that will be incurred as a result of this, and ensuring that those cost savings are channeled directly to supporting the individuals dealing with this direct addiction and those family members affected by it. I think that would be an important step as well, because this is part of the solution, and there's more needs to be done on either side of this statement as well.
Strong letter.
I'd be prepared to add that because it makes nothing but sense. Nothing but sense. So,
okay, Councillor Gamble.
Yes, I too, I am prepared to support this resolution the way you have worded it, but I would like to consider this additional, it would probably be an amendment further, that the federal government allocate resources to the provinces to address drug treatment and rehabilitation.
That's great. I appreciate that wording. I think that suits it entirely.
Yeah.
So that can go in the letter. We haven't written it yet, but it can be crafted. Anybody else wish to address Councillor Koza?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you guys are all aware, Todd's battery has expired, so that's why he's not here anymore. But I just want to say that I fully support this. This is what we need. We don't need enforcement at the bottom level. We need to go after the drug dealers with enforcement, and then go after the drug people with education and with help, and by continually compassion, by continually throwing them in prison. That's kind of what keeps happening in downtown Kelowna, is my understanding, is that you have an addict, you throw him in prison for the night, he gets out, he goes and does the same thing again, you throw him back in prison, and that's not the answer. It's not helping anyone, so I strongly support this. Thank you.
All right.
Just in defense of Councillor McKenzie, we have had this discussion in our private life several times over the years, and I know that he would speak in support of this as well. He may not be able to vote, but I'm sure he'd want his name.
Well, it's 10 o'clock in
Attached to
Jasper, so he's probably in.
Oh, yeah, he's having a beer like a normal person.
So those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, all of you councillors. Good thing to support, and I hope we can get some movement as the certainly support. Yeah.
Councillor Reed said it, but
Yeah. All right.
from doing that, if it's not your purview, it's the wrong thing.
Any other councillor items? Councillor Koza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd written an email a few days ago, and I thought I had sent it, but I guess I didn't send it. So I sent it today when I didn't get any responses. But but truthfully, the president of the Osceola Fish and Game Club, whose name happens to be Nick Kozub, approached me, and with the amount of wildlife interactions we're having and the problematic bears and stuff like that, through the Fish and Game Club, and as well with support from the game officers, he has brought forward to me the City of Armstrong Wildlife and Vector Bylaw, and I'd like to open the discussion in the future about us adopting this bylaw.
We'll get staff to get on the Armstrong. Armstrong.
Yeah, so I make a notice of motion, but that's why I say I've left it till the last moment and I don't know the wording, but Raina can pull her magic off.
Raina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I apologize, Councillor Kozum. I did see your email at the last minute there and hadn't managed to come up with any wording, but I think having a very quick look at the bylaw, I think it would be, the notice of motion would be to direct staff to investigate the wildlife and vector program, and so we can put that on the next council agenda for discussion. So I think it would take a little bit of research and information to look into this.
Okay. Well, we'll deal with it as a notice and a motion then. Okay.
Thank you so much, Raina. Sorry for my delay. And I knew you were busy, so.
Councillor Scar. Good. Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to introduce a notice of motion for next meeting in regards to retaining walls. So, you know, we've taken a fairly unified stand about retaining walls. And the way that our bylaw reads is that you can have setback retaining walls so that they're no more than 1.4 meters high, and then you set back and then you put another one to reach your height goal. So in terms of the environment and what we've been talking about, these aren't any better.
No.
So in fact, you know, they're just a way around the rule. They might be an engineering solution that's better. I couldn't comment on that. And if it's an engineered 10-foot wall, if it's a engineered 10-foot wall cut into two, I'd say it's the same, but that's just my logic. But neither one of them has screening or planting. So the step back wall is just as bad for a community as the tall wall. So I want to introduce a notice of motion to amend our building bylaw. Thank you, Rena. I was looking for the word. To be able to ensure that in these setbacks that there's planting and screening so that it actually achieves the goal that we're trying to set back. I drove through the new part of Lakestone on the east side of Tyndall Drive and had a look around, and there's numerous ones like that. They're achieving the height that they want, and they're getting around our rule because our rule says 1.4 or setback. So, but it's not achieving the real result that we want. And in fact, as I drove up from Okanagan Center today, the new rather large house with the very ugly fence that's on the corner across, I don't care what they say, very ugly fence, across from Gray Monk is doing the very same thing. So we're gonna look up from the lake and we're gonna see this big mass retaining wall. And it's gonna be ugly and it's gonna be hot.
Okay.
So anyways, for the next meeting.
Rena,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, the intent of that is that, so the building bylaw be amended to ensure that the stepped back retaining walls include plantings and screenings?
Yeah.
That's the intent? Okay, thank you.
okay. Councillor Campbell.
And all I want to do is wish all Lake Country residents a good, happy, and safe summer. And please keep your matches to yourself. Keep your fires in your fireplace or in your barbecue. We have to be careful this year. We really do. But enjoy the beautiful weather when we've got it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And further to that, just hoping that everybody in Oyama is safe. I just had a notice from Councillor Mackenzie that there is a forest fire above Oyama. They do have water bombers on it. So that's a
Right now?
Yeah, right now. So everybody, please stay safe and look out for your neighbors and your animals. And yeah, no fires out there, please.
My goodness. Well, hope it wasn't a campfire. That's been banned.
Yes.
I hope it's not another Lytton. It's my hometown.
Because yes, as well as, you know, obviously the danger to life and property, there are firefighters out there fighting these fires in extreme conditions. We've already had one helicopter accident, which has cost the life of one person. So these are very dangerous times for all concerned. So I hope everyone stays safe.
Sorry, I just to add to that the number of people that are out there smoking on the beaches right now is extraordinary. The behavior is absolutely extraordinary.
There's a lot of litter.
I see it every day. My wife, on average, picks up 150 to 200 cigarette butts at the same beach every day.
Oh, goodness.
You know, there's a group of people that come down from a certain subdivision that been getting in confrontations with some of the neighbors because the neighbors are afraid of their houses being burned down, which they have good reason to fear. And these people don't care. And the smoking on the beaches is, you know, there's no smoking in any public place in Lake Country, any park, any public building.
Do we have signs there?
We have limited signs. I would suggest that they're not very effective and they're pretty small. And if I didn't have my glasses, I couldn't see it. So we need to do a better job. What I did notice is that I was driving towards Summerland last week and I was forced back because there was a fire on the highway and I couldn't continue. So I took an excursion through Peachland as I was coming back to get off the highway because the traffic was terrible. It's always nice to see Peachland. And I noticed that their bylaw officers were walking the beaches and talking to people. And I watched them go up to people that were smoking and get them to put it out. So I realize that we don't have the numbers in bylaw right now, but I think that, you know, even if it happened once a week, that the residents would be pretty thankful for it.
And you have a little more ability for self-policing if there are at least signs that you can point to. Say,
well, there are signs, but they're pretty small.
All right. Well, now we are adjourned. Oh, sorry. Was there another comment?
Oh, I was going to say that. Thank you.
Like that.
I got her. I'm happy to say something too.
There is information on Castanet if anybody is concerned. They've got details on there, so keep an eye on that.
We are adjourned. Thank you all and good evening and stay safe and stay cool.